Hello everybody. I'm going to show you how to replace a bathroom faucet. Same principles apply to any faucet, but you can see this one. It's the original one, came in the house. It's brass, it's ugly, it's just out of style. There's just a lot of things that just not the nicest one. Here's the new faucet. It's a Peerless, something we bought at Lowe's. I've already installed 3 of these in other sinks in the house. This is the 4th and final one. So I've perfected it now. And I've laid out all the tools that I use. I figured out how to do it right, how to keep it from leaking, and that's the biggest thing. You want to have a faucet installation that works the first time with no leaks, because if it leaks, you got to undo a lot of it and start over, and that's the biggest frustration. So really, not a whole lot of components here. It's a pretty easy installation. So the first thing you're going to have to do is go underneath the sink, turn off the water. Here's the cold water. So I'm just going to turn that clockwise until that's tight. And you'll see that there's some leaking happening, and that's not unusual. These things probably haven't been turned in years. So the seals underneath are kind of stiff. So don't be too worried about there. And that's the hot one. I'll do that in a second and come back to it. The other thing I wanted to show you, I've got this little bin here. Any kind of you want something to catch the water when you disconnect these pipes. You don't want the water on the bottom of your sink, on the bottom of the cabinet here. And you'll use that several times. Okay, turned off the hot water. And that one was really stiff. And you can see it dripped a few drops here. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is you'll want some paper towels to clean up drips. And also at the end of the project, the paper towels will help you know if you have a leak or not. So the next step is to disconnect the water lines. You can see this white hose, and up at the top there's a gray piece. That's the nut that attaches. I'm just going to show you that. You can see it on the other one. I'm going to go turn those counterclockwise. You may or may not need a tool depending on how hard those were installed. So let me do that and then I'll come back. All right, I disconnected the water lines from the faucet up there. This is a really tight cabinet, so it wasn't conducive to getting my camera up there. But you can see how this is meant for a wrench if you need it. So I just used my crescent wrench there and turned it. And then drained it into this little bucket here. And then here's the cold water one. You can see how it attaches all the way into the wall. And I'm draining that into this bucket just to keep it clean, keep the cabinet clean. And then the next thing you want to do after you disconnect those is come up and just turn your faucet on, even though there shouldn't be anything there. And when I hear a bunch of water down below, just open those up. So those are drained. Now there's no pressure in there. Everything's good. The next thing we need to do is get up under here again, and where you can see it there. See that those 2 black rings? Sorry for the complication here. See the 2 black rings around where that water is dripping? Those are these black nuts that I showed you earlier. See? And those just attach on here. When you screw them up, they tighten the faucet onto the sink here. So I'm going to reach under there, and that's where I'm going to use my leather gloves. You don't need these, but I just found it's easier to get leverage on it. I'm going to reach under there, unscrew those, and I'll be back. Okay, I got those off, but they didn't want to come off by hand. So I grabbed some other pliers I had, and I really just used these like a screwdriver or I just put it like that when I was up there and just twisted them. Turn it like that. Just need a tiny bit to get going. Sometimes these turn on their own, sometimes they don't. So I took those off, and those are going to be trash. We're going to get those out of here. Now we're going to come back up to the old faucet, and it should be disconnected. So this thing should just lift right out of there, and there we have it. So step 1 done. Got an old yucky faucet out. You can see the mess that's been left there. Just a bunch of grime. We're going to clean that off completely. It'll be nice and white when we're done, so that when we go to take this new part and put it on, it's got a nice clean surface to sit on and to be sealed against. So the next thing we're going to need to do, of course, we got to get that out of there. That's the old pop-up drain, and that comes down here. And that's the underside of the sink there. And we're going to take that whole thing out so we can put a new one in. And this sink is going to look so much more modern when we're done here. So the next thing we have to do is we've got to disconnect this pipe. So we have to turn this thing counterclockwise. I'm going to grab my gloves, but oops, I'm sorry. It's going that direction. In this case, I probably don't need my gloves, but the same deal here. We're going to do it to this one, and then we're going to do it up at the top. Really simple. Those will come off by hand. You might want to use your leather gloves, and you definitely want to have your bucket here because you can see it's already starting to leak. And this thing's going to be really disgusting inside, so I just clean it out. I'll show you that when I'm done here. Be right back. Okay, I loosened those two up, and I'm going to just take this whole thing out here. And you can see how that's going to just come down, and it's filled with water, and it's disgusting inside, and the water smells. This is from the kids' bathroom, just brushing teeth and all that. Yeah, my bathroom will stunk too. And then I just need to get this one off. I'm going to loosen that one and then show you what that looks like. All right, I'm loosening this one here, and it's going to be the same deal. And just slide this out, and if you can see in there, it's just disgusting. So I'm going to clean that out, soak it, but there's nothing wrong with this pipe. We'll reuse it, but it's disgusting, and I'd rather start with something clean. But what we have to do now, you see this big flange nut here, and that's this piece right here. I'm going to have to use one of my big crescent wrenches there and twist that off. And that's what is currently holding that pipe up against the sink. So I'm going to do that, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, I've got my wrench. Just going to put it on here. When we put on the new one, this is where that plumber's putty is going to go, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But so now we've got this loosened up here, we need to go up top and get the pop-up sink out. Okay, you got to pull this pop-up drain out, and you can see that it's broken there at the end. It's not supposed to be broken like that. Normally, as you see on this brand new one, I've loosened this so that you can see how it works. You'll have this pole that's in there that goes through that hook that I showed you that was broken, and it's going to prevent this from coming out. So all you need to do is, if you've got something like this piece on here, you just squeeze this together, you pinch it, and it allows you to slide it off. That'll allow you then to unscrew this nut here, and you'll have one, and it'll just pull this out, which will allow this to pop up. You see how there's that hole there? That is what's being held in. Now the next thing I'm going to have to do is take out this grimy looking silver piece, because when we're all done here, we're going to have this nice black top, which I'll unscrew it later for you, but that comes off of there. And sometimes these are siliconed in, which means they're not quite super glued, but there's some caulk, if you will, the silicone that holds it in place, so you might have to break that. Other times it's screwed on top of this part like this is. Just depends on what you've got. And sometimes, but just by hand, you can turn this. I can tell just with all the grime there, I'm not going to be able to turn it. But there's usually some holes in there. I can feel a hole that you're not going to be able to see, but it's about an inch down that I'll be able to get a screwdriver in, and if I have to, I can take a screwdriver, just tap it this way, and that'll break this, and this will start turning, and I can pull it out. So let me do that, and I'll show you what I did. Okay, this one's giving me a little bit of trouble trying to take out. So what I'm doing right now with the old one of these, it's a metal one, and because it's metal, that's part of the reason why it's more difficult. I've got a screwdriver. I took out this component. All I did was unscrewed this part, unscrewed that, pulled this pole out. I've got a screwdriver down there. I've stuck it in there to get some leverage. And I'm just going to start twisting it counterclockwise to try to break the silicone that's underneath there. So let's see how it goes. Alright. I can hear it go. Oh, there it goes. I can feel it. There we go. And you probably can't quite hear what I hear, but I hear. Oh, there it goes. Boom. Simple. And here I am going underneath the sink so you can see what I did here. Here's the screwdriver in this part. I just stuck it all the way in and turned it until it broke that free. That thing otherwise was stuck. It wasn't going to come out from the top. Okay. So I showed you how I went underneath the sink and used a screwdriver to twist this to break all that silicone. And then I just kept maneuvering that for a second. And if you get down here, it's a little bit hard to see here on the video, but you can see all the gunk around that. And then if you could see inside the hole, you can see those holes that I was telling you about. It's kind of hard, but there's some holes in there. And this top silver piece that we're looking at here, in this sink here, is just like this one here. It's just screwed on to the rest of the pipe. See that? It's just screwed. You can see the green part is the pipe, the black part is the cap. It's the exact same way with this one. So what we've got to do is we've got to twist that off, but this thing's been in here for 20 years. When I spin this, the whole thing is spinning. So what I'm going to do is, you may be able to see the hole in there. There's holes in the pipe. So I've just taken a little chisel here. Not really a chisel, but a punch. Just something I can reach across in there and go from one hole to the next to keep the pipe from moving. And then what I'm going to do is take some pliers here, and since I'm holding the camera with my other hand, I'm going to have to put you down here, but I'm going to hold this punch with my left hand, this little hole, and if you got a short screwdriver, anything will work. And then I'm just going to twist this top cap counterclockwise while I hold that punch, and it'll unscrew it. That part is not sealed on, so that'll be pretty easy. Okay, I mentioned being creative. I'm using the base of my hammer here to hold the punch so I can show you what I'm doing. Grab the top of this thing and turn it. Let me see how it's turning. There we go. Keep going, yeah. Probably do this by hand now. Yeah, now it's turning real smoothly. Let's finish that off. Yeah, still gunky. After 20 some years, 22 years. Probably shouldn't be surprised that this is tough. All right, now we're cooking. Pull that the rest of the way off. Look at that. Success. Now what I'm going to do is pull this punch out, and then this pipe is just going to drop underneath the sink, and we'll be done the removal. Okay, I've got the punch out. I'm just going to pull this, try to pull this out. Come on. One other thing I need to tell you about this white nut is what they call this thing here. You're going to want to take this off along with this little plastic washer, this nylon washer. They're both going to slide down this way. You'll use those on the new one to slide back up, and again, that's going to seal the pipe to the next pipe and keep all the stinkiness out. Okay, time to take off this washer. I'll show you the best way I've found to do it. Put your screwdriver in here and get to the back of the other side and just pry down on it like that, and it'll come out. And you can see I'm prying that off like that. And you're just going to keep working that. There, I ripped it. And then from there, you can either just pull it off. It depends on how old it is and how hard it is. You know, I got some residue there. It's no big deal. That's why I've got the razor knife. The razor blade knife to scrape all this stuff off. But just wanted to show you a good way to get it started. Spent about 10 minutes down here cleaning this bottom flange right here. Just got the silicone and that rubber gasket. Sometimes they come off real easily. It all depends on how long it's been since that's been replaced. And if it's been 20 years, you know, might spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most cleaning it off. And that's going to allow that perfect seal that you're going to need to keep it from leaking. And that's a spot where it often leaks. So that's a good place to invest a few minutes. I'm going to come up here and clear all of this gunk. This is the old silicone that was in there. So all I'm going to do is take a knife like this and start cutting that out. Again, this will be another one. Spend a few minutes doing it. Sometimes I also open this up and take out this entire knife. That way I can massage it down a little bit better. And then I'm going to do up here. This is where the old faucet came off. And I'm just going to take a flat razor like this, scrape it off. This is usually not too bad. You can see just a lot of powder like that. Scrape around there. And then also use some of this kitchen cleaner. Spray it on there, let it sit for a few minutes. That way it's nice and clean so that when I go to put the new one on, you can't even tell that there was an old one. Just a quick in-process video here. I've taken the razor out. You may want to wear gloves. You just got to be careful here. But it allows me to get down there. And really, you're just scraping off all this old stuff. It comes off pretty easily, believe it or not. Just scrapes off, and you keep taking that. And then you want to feel, okay, there's still some more. Keep using your finger. What's most important is this area. From the top of the sink, from right about there, down to about there. Which on this case, it's about down to about there, because this curves here. You don't care too much below that. But what you want to do is make a clean surface for the silicone you're going to put on there. And this is where it seals. Okay, I spent probably no more than 10 minutes scraping this out of here. And then I just used a wet paper towel, to pull off the debris. Feels really good, nice and smooth. There you go. Same thing up here. I sprayed some of that cleaner on there, let it sit for a few minutes, wiped it off, and then did the same thing. It's really smooth. You can see it's just a little bit of a stain from the other part being on there, or the other faucet, and this is just some grime and residue. But now the next step is to put the new faucet in. Now, there are certain standard size faucets. This is a 4-inch, meaning the distance between the handles is 4 inches each. You just got to make sure that when you're replacing a faucet, you buy the right distance between these two parts. So you can see how I just placed that in there. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to place it in there. I'm going to then take these plastic nuts, go underneath once I put those in the holes, and then just hand tighten these all the way to the top. I'm also going to use my leather gloves because I can get a little more leverage to twist those on there tight. Doesn't need to be any more than hand tight. Now this particular faucet, the instructions tell you to use silicone. So I'm going to use this silicone, and all I'm going to do is apply a bead of silicone. I'm going to hold this in my hand. As I do it, I'm going to have to use two hands. So I'm going to just place a bead of silicone all the way around this outer perimeter. You know, maybe a 1/4 inch wide, 1/2 inch at most. I'll use more than I need probably. And then when I place it down in the hole, some of that silicone is going to squeeze out, which is fine. But I'm going to go under there and put the nuts on. Now, one thing you want to be careful of, you want to get this thing straight, in line. And when you go on and put the nuts underneath, sometimes when you twist them really hard at the very end, it can make the sink do that, make the faucet do that, or do that, which is fine. You just want to do your best to hold it. If you've got another helper that can keep the top aligned, that's great. But if not, tighten them as much as you can. And then if you need to, just whack on it with your hand a tiny bit. Once they're tightened, you'll have to hit it harder than I am because it'll be fastened in there. And that way you want it nice and straight so that these are parallel, this is perpendicular to it, that it's in line with the center. It's really not hard. Okay, you can see I've got the silicone on there. Nothing fancy about this, doesn't have to be perfect, just a bead of silicone all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to place it in here. Try to do it as neatly as possible. Did it pretty neatly. And I'm going to go underneath and put those black nuts on there like I mentioned and start tightening them with my glove, trying to keep this thing as straight as possible. Here I am under the sink. I've got these black nuts, this one and this one, screwed all the way up against the top. I used my leather glove to really twist on that pretty hard to keep them nice and tight. And then the next thing I'm going to do is attach the water hoses back to the bottom of the faucets and tighten those and tighten the, remember I used the little wrench to get that off. And the reason I'm going to do that now while the sealant, the silicone is still a little bit wet, is that way if I'm twisting with the wrench and it moves the faucet a tiny bit, it's no big deal. I can still move it in place before the silicone hardens. So I'm going to go do that and we'll follow up at the top of the sink. All right, I just want to show you that I have the water lines connected back to the faucet. I've got those black nuts tightened so the faucet is really tight against the sink, and I've already tightened the water hoses. So now we'll go back up top here and see how our sink is doing. See how the faucet looks from the top. It looks pretty straight on. I've got it straightened. You can see that the silicone has squeezed out around the outside. That's actually a very good thing. You see they're sealed all the way around the outside. That's beautiful. That is exactly what you want. Now you just got to wipe that off. All right. I wiped off all of the excess silicone. All I did was take a dry paper towel at first and kind of just scoop off the worst of it and did all the way around. And then once I did that, I took a paper towel, got a little bit of the mineral spirits on it, just made it a little bit wet, and then just cleaned off the bottom and the edge of that. So now it looks perfect. Now we're doing great. Next step, and we're getting close to the end, and this is all pretty straightforward and pretty easy. But now we've got to put this hose, this pipe back in. This is the drain. And we're going to unscrew this. And what's going to happen with this component, we're going to put silicone all the way around that lip there. So in this area, all the way around there. And we're going to put a whole bunch of it there. And we're also going to put a whole bunch of silicone right here. We're just going to go overboard. And the reason for that is a prime source for water to leak, and then you'll be leaking forever. And then you've got to take this all apart, scrape it all out again. And trust me, I've already done that, and I've already made that mistake. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use Teflon tape around the top of this. All the way around that. The instructions don't tell you to do that, but if you follow the instructions, you're going to have leaks. So this is experience talking. You need to use the Teflon tape, but you're also going to need, trying to get you some good light here, you're also going to need the Teflon tape on this surface down below here. So what happens is this goes underneath the sink and pushes up, and then you screw that cap to the top of it, and then this black rubber seal here, that seals up against the bottom of the sink. We're also going to use the plumber's putty. That's not in the instructions either. So again, if you follow the instructions, you're going to get leaks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to untwist this all the way down. I'm just going to do a trial fit because I want to know where to put the Teflon tape. So I'm going to unscrew that all the way down, move this black washer down. I'm going to temp install this underneath the sink, and I'll come back and show you how that looks. All right. So I've got that in there. You can see I've got that in the sink. And then underneath here, I've got the pipe just tightened up against the bottom of the sink. It's not done. You can see it's a little loose. That's fine. All I'm doing right now is just trying to figure out where that rubber seal comes in contact with the sink. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this apart. It's real simple. Just going to take that down. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to have to hold this black piece while I unscrew the pipe, and then I'll show you how to put on the Teflon tape. As you're looking at the pipe from the top, I'm going to be going clockwise with the tape, this Teflon tape. And the reason for that is when I'm screwing this cap on later, it won't untie that tape. It'll keep it on there. And I'm going to do 2 to 3 layers of tape. You need at least 2 layers, once around and then once around again, so that you've got 2 to 3 layers. And that way the tape will seal the threads so that water can't get through. And I'm going to do it down here too. So I'll be right back and show you what that looks like. Okay, we've got the Teflon tape on there, as you can see. About 2 layers, top and bottom there. When I say bottom, I mean bottom. 2 layers there wrapped around clockwise as you look down from the top there. 2.5 layers. And then the last thing that we're going to do here is this plumber's putty. And we're going to make a bead of plumber's putty, and we're going to put it all the way around the top of this thing. And actually, it's going to be up about here because that's where it touches the sink. And it's going to be hard to do this with 2 hands, so what I'm going to do is put the camera down and then show you. But I'm going to just pinch off, I don't know, not a golf ball size, maybe about maybe a third of a golf ball, if you will. And I'm going to rub it between my 2 hands to make it kind of a snake like you do with silly putty when you were a kid. And I'm just going to press that on here all the way around. Again, it's better to have too much of this than not enough. I'm going to press it around. That way when we put this up against the bottom of the sink, that plumber's putty is going to be sealed against these grooves here, the threads. It's also going to be sealed against the bottom of the sink, and it's going to ensure that we don't have any leaks. All right, got the plumber's putty on there. You can see about the size of what I used there. And I'm just going to press that around, make it a little different shape to it, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. That's what it looks like after I press it down. You can see I've made it tighter, or thinner at the top of the bead and wider at the bottom. Did that on purpose, just to make sure when it goes up inside that hole there, it seals against the bottom of the sink. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some silicone in here, and I'm going to put silicone around the lip of this piece, and then I'll be back. Alright, I've got silicone on there. It's not real pretty. Doesn't have to be real pretty. And I've got some silicone in there. You don't want to get it past the hole. You want to just leave it on the angled surface. And I'm going to place this one in here. Place the cap, flip it over and place it in there. I'm going to go up underneath. I'm going to spin this around while I hold that. I'm going to spin this around until the cap is tight on that. And then once I've done that, I'm going to start spinning this nut here clockwise. That's going to push this plastic or this rubber washer up, and then it's going to seal the washer and the plumber's putty up against the bottom of the sink. One thing you got to make sure of, very important, this piece here, this little nub that's sticking out, that needs to face the back of the sink, so like that when we're done, because the little pole that goes in this hole here will connect to that later on through another part. So just make sure that faces the back of the sink. Okay, that's done. One underneath, you can now see that the lid there, the cap, has been screwed into the bottom pole. The pipe, you can see the sealant has squirted out. That's fine. We're going to clean that off, and I'm going to show you underneath in just a bit. I'm going to come underneath the sink here. Notice I have not yet tightened this nut. Talking about this one here, I'll do that in a second. That's going to push everything up there. I just wanted to show you what the top looked like. So I'll tighten this and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, I've tightened that nut, and you can see this plumber's putty coming off. That's fine. It's just going to get pinched off. So I'm just going to pull off the excess. No big deal. That's why you want extra. And then you can see how that little pipe extension there is facing the back of the wall. That's what you want. That's the back wall. I didn't have that when I showed you the last couple of seconds, but that's what we've got. So I'm going to pull off that excess plumber's putty, and then it's just a matter of waiting for that all to dry, but I'll hook up these other pipes in just a minute and show you how to do that. All right, the plumber's putty has been cleaned off in the sense that I got rid of the excess that's hanging off. And just because it's easier with my hands free, I took this nut, I put this nut on first, then this nylon washer here, this piece right here, put them on there. So the next step here is to take this pipe and put it in. Now, this nylon washer, what it does is it seals against the inside of this to keep water from leaking out. So I'm going to put that in there and just tighten that up a bit. We might have to adjust that a little bit later. So it's just kind of hanging there by that. Then we're going to take this trap part here, and it needs to go up in this pipe, but also it needs to attach over here. Now, this connection here is the only one that doesn't have one of these washers. See, the washer is on this one. Left it on there. This one is built with that flanged edge, so it doesn't need one. But what we need to do is put this up and twist this such that it's in there. Now, sometimes these aren't perfectly aligned and you'll get leaks just because this isn't perfectly aligned. If that's the case, you just loosen them all up a little bit and you let them relax, and then you tighten them back up. Just tighten that. So I'm gonna get my leather glove out and tighten these a bit. Like I said, you can get better grip on them that way. That's just how I like to do it. And I'd say these things are really tight. Now we're going to put the finishing touches on it. So this is the part that goes in the sink. This is the stopper. And now I can't get it out. Or can I? I can. And this is the pole that's going to go in here. And underneath, I've got to connect this in here. And once I've got it connected and I adjust the height of it, and you'll figure that out, then I tighten up against this thing. And remember that little knob that I said needs to face the back of the sink? That's what this is for. This is going to go into that back knob, and while this part is in the sink, this is going to go through the hole here. I'm going to screw this knob tight. Let's get down below. I'm going to leave the stopper in the sink with this component facing back, just like so, because I need to get this pole through that hole in it. And let's see, I guess I should have also left this pole up top. I'll do that in just a moment, but that's easy. So you'll notice that in this part that faces back, there's a little nylon washer just like before. This white ball is gonna seal against that. So let's see, when you put that in there, you can look up top and see, and I'll just do it, but yeah, the stopper's going up and down as I move that. So I'm going to tighten that. Tighten that. Put the pole into the back. And then I'm going to show you where that pole goes. Okay, I did the work underneath. I'll show you how that works in just a moment. You can see I've got the pole here, and I've got the stopper there. I've got the stopper sticking up. And I pull the pole, stopper goes down, goes in. So let me show you how that gets connected. It's not tricky, but you need to know what you're looking at. All right, so with this pole pushed down, it's going to push the stopper up that's in the middle of the sink, and then the pole, that's that little pole that you lift at the back of the sink to make the sink stopper go down, is this pole here. So you want to then adjust this up. So with this down, you're going to put this through maybe the bottom hole, it just depends, but of this plastic piece. And then wherever this falls on that, you tighten this little screw up here at the top. So now that metal pole and the green plastic arm are connected. So I'm going to lift that pole in the back of the sink, and you see that's what happened. This whole thing went up and the stopper went down. Now if you push that back down, the stopper is going to go up. That's how it all works together. So you just got to play with how you want that adjusted. Everything's put together. Everything's attached. All of the water lines are connected. But, of course, I haven't turned it back on. So now's the moment of truth. Now's when we turn the water on, run this thing for several minutes. We're going to also fill it up. Let it sit there for a few minutes to make sure it's not leaking down around the outside of that where I put all that silicone. And if we come down here, I've got my bin here. This is mainly so I can catch any water dripping. It's not a huge surprise if something leaks. And when I say something leaks, either when I turn on the valves to turn the water on, remember when I turned them off, they were dripping a little bit, so might have to adjust those. But sometimes these aren't perfectly aligned, like I said. So if we see a little bit of water dripping out of there, I want this to catch it. I'll adjust it. Also, up at the top of the sink, up the pipe where I had the plumber's putty, I sure hope it doesn't leak there. But after I fill it up, the other thing that I do is I'll put a couple of dry paper towels in the bottom of this bin and then leave it for an hour or so, and then come back, and if I see any drops of water, it's a lot easier to see on a paper towel than sometimes elsewhere. So let's get cold water turned on. Alright, not feeling any drops at that valve. Again, that's not unusual if they've been stationary. Yeah, see a little bit of drops there. I'm just turn this off and on a little bit and hopefully work that seal that's in there. It's dripping a little bit. Like I said, that often happens because that seal hasn't been worked in a while. So I've got the water on now. This thing will probably stop leaking. If it doesn't, there's usually ways to tighten it up. Sometimes it's the connection up at the top that's not tight, the top of the valve where the water hose attaches to that nut. But we'll give it a chance. We'll give it a few minutes. Sometimes it just leaks while you're opening it. So I've got it turned on. It's gonna come up top. Turn the water on. Cold water comes out. Hot water comes out. We're just gonna run that for a couple of minutes. It's been a couple of hours since I sealed that. Usually in about 30 minutes the silicone is good, but it's been a few hours now, so I'm not worried about the silicone. I'm just gonna let that run for a few minutes and then we'll check for leaks. I've run the water for several minutes, haven't noticed any leaks yet. That's definitely a good sign. Leaks could develop after several more minutes, so we'll give it a chance there, and I'll run a little bit later. The only leak that I've noticed isn't a leak, but where the valves, I turned on the water valves, I'm getting a few drops at the water valves. So I'm going to take a wrench, lean in there, and tighten it up. Probably won't spend a whole lot of time showing you that, but sometimes, you know, those need to be tightened a little bit. So I'll do that. But what I'm looking for as far as the leaks go is any leaks in any of the joints. That should be obvious there. Definitely important to look at the top where I had all the plumber's putty. I don't see anything. That's totally dry, which is great. You feel around, nothing. Sometimes feeling down here on the bottom of this trap, that's where stuff will accumulate. I haven't felt anything. So all goodness. I'm going to tighten up these valves, hopefully keep maybe you saw the drip just happening there, just saw some dripping. So I'll tighten that up a little bit. Hopefully that takes care of it. And then we'll give it one last run with water for 5 minutes, and hope we don't have any leaks. Alright, I took my wrench here and I tightened up both valves, both the hot water valve here and the cold water valve here, and I'll just show you. But on the hot water, on both of them, this nut here, I tightened it, and I had to hold this stem of it while I turned that, so because this whole thing is too flexible. So I held that while I tightened that, and I also tightened this connection here. I did that to both the hot and the cold. I'm not seeing any more drips. So right now I've got a nice dry floor here. I'm going to cover that with paper towels and then come back every few minutes and check it out. And if after an hour or so it hasn't leaked, I know I'm good. Now, keep in mind, there's water in this right now. That's totally full. So it should be leaking here, or it could be leaking here, just based on the water that's sitting in there. The fact that it's not means that we've done something right. The water that I put up top in the sink is still there. I don't see any water anywhere. I've looked at the plumber's putty. That whole spot there is totally dry. So I'm going to drain the sink. I'm going to run it for a few more minutes with the paper towels on the floor here. And then I'm going to come back and check. And assuming we have no leaks, this job is done. The faucet is fully installed. See, it's nice and straight. The water there is sitting there just like it should. It's not leaking underneath that black cap. Come down below to where I have the paper towels. There's not a single wet spot on any of those. These are not wet spots. It's just how the light's hitting them. Got no water leaking anywhere. It's exactly what we wanted. Take your time, follow those instructions, do it right, and you'll only have to do it once, and you'll get 20 years out of this faucet. Thanks for watching.